All right, today we're jumping into one of the biggest ideas in all of psychology, Albert Bandura's social learning theory. And the core idea is actually super simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. It suggests that we learn so much of what we know, not from being taught directly, but just by watching everyone else around us.
I mean, think about it for a second. Have you ever started using a catchphrase that your friend always says? Or maybe you bought a jacket because you saw your favorite actor wearing it. Of course you have. We all do it. And that little subconscious habit, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. It turns out monkey see, monkey do is way more complex and fascinating than it sounds.
Okay, so let's really get into the heart of this. The big, central idea is that a huge chunk of our learning isn't a solo activity. It happens in a social context. It's less about someone telling you what to do and much more about you just observing, absorbing, and, often imitating what you see. So here's the official textbook definition for you. The theory, cooked up by the brilliant Albert Bandura, says that we learn from each other through this loop of observation, imitation, and modeling. It's this constant, powerful cycle that really shapes everything about us, from our little habits to our big beliefs. And Bandura was really clear on this point. This isn't just about being a parrot and mindlessly copying people. He said, learning is a cognitive process that happens in a social context. That phrase, cognitive process, is key. It means your brain is actively working here. It's paying attention, it's processing, it's making choices, even when you're not fully aware it's happening. So, who exactly are we learning from? Well, basically everyone. In this theory, the people we watch are called models. And these models are all around us. You've got the obvious ones, right? Your parents, your teachers. But then there are your friends, your peers. And maybe more than ever in today's world, there are the figures you see in the media, on TV, on social media. We are literally surrounded by models 24/7. So how does this whole thing actually work? I mean, it's not enough to just see something and then automatically do it, right? Bandura figured out that there's a specific four-step process. But before we even get to the steps, we have to ask a more basic question. What makes us want to copy someone in the first place? Right, it all comes down to motivation, and that motivation really comes in two main flavors. You've got direct reinforcement, that's easy. You do something and you get rewarded for it, simple. But then there's vicarious reinforcement. Now this one is more subtle, and it is incredibly powerful. This is when you see someone else get rewarded or punished for something they do. If you see your coworker get praised by the boss for working late, you're suddenly a lot more likely to stay late yourself, even if nobody ever told you to. That's vicarious reinforcement right there. Okay, so keeping that idea of motivation in your back pocket, here are the 4 steps. First up, attention. It's pretty obvious. You can't learn something if you don't notice it in the first place. You have to actually pay attention to the model. Step 2 is retention. You need to be able to store that behavior you saw in your memory. Next, step 3, reproduction. You have to be physically able to do the thing you saw. I can watch a gymnast do a backflip all day, but I'm probably not going to be able to reproduce it. And finally, step 4, motivation. You have to have a good reason, that direct or vicarious reinforcement we just talked about, to actually go ahead and perform the behavior. You absolutely need all 4 of these for observational learning to click. Now, this all sounds really logical, but how do we know it's actually true? Well, that leads us to one of the most famous and, let's be honest, pretty controversial experiments in the history of psychology. I'm talking about the Bobo doll experiment. This is where Bandura rolled up his sleeves and really put his theory to the test. And this wasn't some tiny study. The experiment involved 72 kids, an even split of boys and girls, all between 3 and 6 years old. This whole thing was designed to answer one major question. Can aggression be learned just by watching it? The setup was really clever. They split the kids into 3 groups. The first group watched an adult in a room just go to town on this inflatable clown doll called a Bobo doll. The adult was hitting it, kicking it, yelling things at it. The second group saw an adult model who played peacefully with other toys and totally ignored the Bobo doll. And the third group, the control group, didn't see any adult model at all. After that, each kid was taken into a room with a bunch of toys, including the Bobo doll. And the big question was, what are they gonna do? The results? Whoa. They were just so dramatic and so clear. The kids who saw the aggressive adult were way, way more aggressive themselves. And they weren't just being randomly aggressive, they were copying the exact physical hits and even the verbal insults they had seen the adult use. It was unmistakable.
So what did all of this prove? Well, it was a huge confirmation of Bandura's theory. First, it showed that kids could learn these very specific aggressive behaviors just by watching. And here's the kicker, this learning happened without any reward or punishment. Nobody told them, good job for hitting the doll. It also uncovered some interesting details, like the fact that boys tended to be more physically aggressive and that all the kids were more likely to copy an adult who is the same gender as them.
Look, this is so much bigger than just kids and inflatable dolls in a lab 60 years ago. The implications of this theory are massive, and honestly, they help explain so much about our world and how we behave every single day.
Once you know about it, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. In education, it's why a teacher's behavior is just as important as their lesson plan. In parenting, it's the foundation of that old saying, actions speak louder than words. Therapists use these principles to help people model and learn healthier habits. It's at the center of the whole debate around media violence. In advertising, the entire industry is basically built on social learning. Show you a model you admire using a product and hope you'll imitate them.
So, after all these years, how does the theory hold up? Well, like any huge idea in science, it has some incredible strengths, but it's not perfect. It's got its critics and its limitations. So let's try to take a fair, balanced look at it. On the one hand, the theory's greatest strength is that it beautifully explains how we learn things without having to go through a painful trial and error process for everything. It's backed by some really strong experiments, and as we just saw, it has tons of real-world uses. But it's not the whole story. Critics often point out that it doesn't give enough weight to biological factors, like our genetics or hormones. Some argue that a controlled lab isn't the same as the messy real world, and it doesn't totally explain the biggest mystery of all. Why, out of the thousands of things we see every day, do we only choose to copy a few of them? And that really brings us right to our final thought. Social learning theory forces us to accept this one profound, kind of heavy reality. Whether we want to be or not, we are all models. Every single one of us. We're models for our kids, our coworkers, our friends, even strangers. So the real question it leaves us with isn't about psychology, it's a personal one. If we are all constantly teaching by doing, what in the world are we teaching?